What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing a 2-round 2025 mock draft with no trades. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. We're on the road to 15K, and we're on pace to break that before the end of the month. So thank you guys so much for all the love you guys have been pouring on. We've grown over 1,000 subscribers in the past 28 days. So I really do appreciate you guys showering me with the love that you guys have. We just had an awesome stream where we ended up watching the Natty together. It was extremely fun. Again, I appreciate you guys for spending your time and your energy, and some of you even your money with me. But I appreciate you. I love you. Below my face is my board. It's based on my all 22 grades. It is still being worked on. There are still positions being finalized. We are going to the Senior Bowl in literally less than a week. So excited for that as well. You guys will be getting some content while we're boots on the ground in Mobile, but I'm also going to be here in Dallas because I already am at the Shrine Bowl. So lots of content coming your way. Get excited. Let's get into this. Of course, if you guys want to see some extra all 22 clips, then I actually post those over on X. You get to see those for free when I end up evaluating players and being able to understand why I have a crazy board the way I do. But you can also support me by going to the UnderDog Fantasy link, which is in the top link of my link tree as well. But of course, you can just use code HAILMARY if you do want to sign up and have some fun. But let's get on with it. Starting out with the number 1 overall selection, we have the Tennessee Titans. And I love the Tennessee Titans. Great organization. Let's not fuck around here. I think after the Senior Bowl, I might get a little bit ballsy and then do another one where the quarterbacks slip. I just don't think they're going to. And with the Kansas City Chiefs former AGM now as your GM, I do think that Cam Ward is going to be the more likely selection. It looks like that's something that the organization will be going towards. And for those of you guys who are wondering what the hell I'm wearing, I talked about it, but I got a Justin Jefferson LSU jersey. I have a Jamar Chase one and now a Justin Jefferson one. I had to get the duo. It's a sick jersey. So, I mean, I took all advantages or all opportunities I could to be able to get these. They're some of my favorite ones. And now I have the dynamic duo. And also, Kevin O'Connell got an extension today. So I wanted to shout out to the Vikings there. At number 2 for the Cleveland Browns, people like to bring up Shedeur Sanders as an option here. You could do it. I mean, they're not in a very good situation overall in terms of what happened with Deshaun's contract and all that stuff. But at the same time, I do think that you need to do the best thing for your team, which is to go after Abdul or Travis. I do like the edge class, but at the same time, I do see a vacancy at edge 2 for a pass rusher. And I think that Isaiah McGuire pairs perfectly with Abdul Carter for differing roles, differing packages. And I really like the fact that they could end up being a yin and yang at edge 2 versus Travis Hunter. I don't have a clear vision for what he would be there on Cleveland. And I think for Travis Hunter's sake, as well as for Abdul's sake, we go after Abdul. At number 3 for the New York Giants, I've mentioned this several times. Again, we're not going to waste too much time in the top part of the draft. We will be going Shedeur Sanders, but it's not because I think Shedeur is like the savior of New York or anything like that. And I'm not trying to shit on Shedeur, but again, we're talking about top 3 picks. These guys are supposed to be franchise changing. I don't have either of the quarterbacks as top 32 players. I think Cam Ward is the more understandable ceiling, so I get that. But with Shedeur, I think that with the job insecurity that Joe Schoen and Brian Dable have, they're going to make a self-preservation move. And self-preservation, basically, they're going to do something that gives them the best chance of being brought on for longer. So they're not going to bring on someone who's a project. They're not going to bring on someone who's ceiling. They're going to give the highest floor, which Shedeur Sanders does offer that. At number 4, we got the New England Patriots, and a lot of routes you could go here. You could technically rock it with Mason Graham, Tetairoa McMillan, Travis Hunter. I also think a dark horse pick, if you wanted to, would be Josh Connerly, but I would personally try to trade back for that. Regardless, I do believe that the most likely option would be to go after the best player available, and that is Travis Hunter. Of course, this is also now a defensive-minded team, and so Travis Hunter going to be the selection there. Again, I don't want to waste our time, just fiddling around and over-explaining things that have been explained ad nauseum, because the majority of the work is going to be coming past pick 5. At pick 5, you got Mason Graham, you got Will Johnson. The question is, which one do you feel more comfortable? Which position is more desperate to be filled, and which one is more depth-heavy in this class? Defensive interior is a position you could end up waiting on if you do really want to. Like even on day 3, you can go after a Shamar Turner, right? You could go after India's Peoples, Darius Alexander round 3, Demonte Capehart. There are really good players. At the same time, you could talk about the corner class, right? Like after this, we're assuming Ben Morrison returns to school. Like that's going to be something that I'm going to continue doing for the next 3 days until he declares or decides to stay. If he decides to declare, then that'll be adjusted in the mock drafts following. But Trey Amos, you got guys in round 2 you could go after, but on like that round 3 territory, Denzel Burke, Noel Williams, and I'd prefer to roll the dice on defensive interior on that day than an actual starting cornerback. So I'm personally going to go Will Johnson, best player in the class in my opinion. And so we're going to be continuing on here with the Las Vegas Raiders at pick number 6. Again, no trades. Ben Johnson, not the coach of the Raiders. That is certainly going to remove my desire to go Ashton Jeanty. And I'm going to go far heavier into the need for a wide receiver 1. We'll see what the Raiders end up with coach-wise. But, you could go Mason Graham and just say we're going to overload our defensive line. It wouldn't be a horrible idea. But I do think getting a true, reliable X-receiver on this team would be the best route forward. Again, assuming no trades. At number 7 for the Jets, another one where you run up the card. Mason Graham's a fantastic player. He is top 20 for me, but that is also because I love a lot of players at a lot of other positions. He is a clear defensive interior 1 for me. And, especially on the Jets where you have a true defensive interior 1, I think he's going to absolutely thrive. So for the Jets specifically, I would much more weigh Mason Graham's upside than anything else. At number 8 for the Carolina Panthers, dark horse pick here would be Malachi Starks because of what you can do in round number 2. At the same time, you could also go defensive back in round number 2. I think the best thing that you can do here is to go after an edge. And James Pierce might, if he ends up testing out at 243, there's a chance he ends up, slipping a little bit due to body type. But I do think that he will end up being closer to that 247 range, 250. And I think he'll test out very well. James Pierce is a phenomenal player. I'm going to show my love for him and say he goes there to Carolina. At number 9 for the New Orleans Saints. You can go a multitude of routes here, offensive line being one of them. I do think that it really depends on the head coach in terms of the direction that this should go in. But defensive line is very popular at this pick as well, whether you want to go Mykel Williams. I've seen some people say that Shamar Stewart's linked to you, and I do think Shamar would be a fringe first to second round selection just because he's extremely raw. He's a great athlete. And if that's the case, then I'll opt to go elsewhere. And that right tackle spot does need some help for sure for the long run. I'm going to go after a player that I think the medicals will check out. He has great athleticism, has a good amount of strength as well, and a good amount of polish. Josh Simmons played it over at San Diego State, and we're going to have him play it here in the state of Louisiana for you guys. At number 10 for the Chicago Bears, when you look at now Ben Johnson, hallelujah, being brought onto the team and being the one who's going to be leading the direction of this team as well, you need to look at what was so successful for him there in Detroit, and its offensive line and its running game. And Ashton Jeanty absolutely is on the board for this pick. You can use him as a Sonic and Knuckles combination there with DeAndre Swift. I do also think if you want to start looking at offensive line, it's not out of the question, right? The Lions prioritize both. But at the same time, I do think that when you look at the potential of Ashton Jeanty as an every down back that, especially if given a rest, could be something truly special, I do get excited about that. And I will say, though, the Bears also might be leaning away from that because I'm just going to be real. I ended up talking about this on stream, so if you guys want to watch it back, you can feel free to do so. If they ended up going offensive line here, even potentially defensive line as well, and in the second round, so basically the first 2 picks were offensive and defensive line respectively. In the second round, their second round pick could be Quinchon, and I think their third round pick could be Travion, because we look at what they have 72. They could trade up for Travion, but you can end up getting a perfectly matched up backfield with Henderson and Judkins. Theoretically, it is possible. So I think with that in there, with that vision, it costs a lot less as well. I think this is the prime opportunity actually to go against what I was saying and go after an offensive lineman. And the one who I think will be gaining the most traction based on combine and everything, looking at his overall workload, is Josh Connerly. Because I do think he can kick into guard for the short run and then end up being the successor to Braxton Jones in the long. He's a 5-star athlete. He was a true freshman, or as a freshman, I should say. He was an actual running back, 5-star player, freak athlete. Even though he's 6'4", 315, the dude's anchor initially can get suspect, but I've never seen a player get blown up with his initial anchor to where he was lifted in the air. You can check this over on X. I ended up posting this clip, and he ended up re-anchoring somehow. Josh Connerly really is phenomenal. And for the Bears, I think that, it would be an excellent move because you can kick him to the interior until you're ready to be able to move him back out, because Braxton, I don't think, is the long-term answer. And even if he is, Josh Connerly is well worth that number 10 pick, especially in case of injury as well. He is my number 7 player on my board. And number 11 for the San Francisco 49ers, I also think that offensive line is right up their alley. But I will say in the second round, I'm looking heavy into Ozzie Trapilo here. He's really good in both his power and zone blocking schemes. Like, I really like him a lot. The only reason he's not amazing in zone blocking, in my opinion, is because he's not the best athlete, but 6'8", 310 pounds. He's a top 32 player for me, sitting there at number 25 overall on my board. He's a really good player, but I don't think that a team will be taking him in the first, because at 6'8" and sub 320, it is a little bit of a unique build. So I do think that a team like the Niners could be able to poach one there in the second round. And you guys can definitely do some damage there in the second. A dark horse pick for this team could be something like Genty, just because you guys go like batshit crazy from time to time. But let's look at the defensive line. Shamar Stewart could be one of those ones that is a curveball that the Niners select. But if you're going to throw a curveball, let's go Mykel Williams here. Because as he got healthier and healthier this year, because you're going to say, hey, the production, look at this. It's not necessarily great, right? 11% pass rush win rate. You forget that, literally week 1 or 2, he ended up having a high ankle sprain. And for a freak athlete, that's a big deal. That is very limiting. And as the season progressed, you saw him get better and better. This is such a key game versus Tennessee, versus Texas, versus Notre Dame, and even versus Notre Dame, which he performed poorly statistically. I ended up grading that game, and I thought he did a fine job. And, hell, being able to do very well versus some of the top tackles in the draft. He proved that as he got healthier, he got better. And that kind of shows that maybe the numbers are skewed negatively because of his health, not necessarily his talent. And I've been a Mykel Williams denier, okay? So I don't want to hear anything about me being a fanboy or anything like that. He earned my trust. He earned my appreciation. And so we'll be selecting him there at 11. At 12 for the Cowboys, again, you could try to push the running back need later on because, the running back class is good. It absolutely is good, but there's a certain point where you got to say, hey, this is the best player on the board. And with Ben Morrison returning, Braden Swinson not being a legitimate option at this point, because again, I blend my board with realism, and I know Braden Swinson's not going this high. I'm going to be going after Ashton Genty. I think Amari Hampton is a better running back overall because of the non-8 fumbles over the past 2 years. He has 6 on his career, over 600 carries, and only 1 this past year on 281. He's gotten better and better and better at that every year. Ashton has had 4 fumbles on each of these years, but at the same time, Ashton Genty, Amari, and Hampton, not necessarily the same back at all. Ashton Genty, I think, is truly a 3-down back, and Amari and Hampton is something that is pretty much a poor man's Saquon Barkley. That's going to be the difference. You have, better version of Devin Singletary, poor version of Marshawn Lynch, versus poor version of Saquon Barkley. And that's honestly an incredible selection to have. And it will be telling in terms of the vision for the Cowboys. But Genty also was a former wide receiver in high school. So I do think that even though he's not a great receiver in terms of the tools he has now, he does have them in the bag to where I think he could end up developing more and more as well. And Genty is just such a solid player. If you get him for 5 years and you get a top 5 running back for 5 years, that helps out your team arguably more than any other position outside at quarterback. Having a reliable running back takes the stress off the line because the line doesn't have to pass block as much, takes the stress off the quarterback, the receivers. It really does, especially when you have a creative running back as well. It does take a ton of stress off the offense. So that's my argument for a running back there. At 13 for the Dolphins, again, no trades in this. I think Greer would never take an offensive lineman round 1, so that's why I'm going to avoid it. I do think Malachi Starks is the most logical option. You took Javon Holland at the top of the second. I just think that it does make a little too much sense. There's a certain point where you got to be copy paste, and right now that's what we're doing. But I just think that, you could throw a crazy curveball in here and say Matt Golden goes to replace Tyreek Hill. And if you guys are without Tyreek and then don't bring on somebody in free agency, could be the move. But defensive back absolutely would be at least considerable at this point. Malachi Starks would not play the role versus Matt Golden that he did when he ended up getting toasted. I think that if you put him in the right spot, he is worth a number 13 overall pick. He is 15th overall on my board. And number 14 for the Indianapolis Colts. This is another one that's so quick and so easy, right? Like, let's not fuck around. If Tyler Warren's here, he is the best option for the team. He is a reliable tight end. He might not be the fastest straight line athlete, but he'll still be 4.65, right? Might be like 4.7. But even at 4.7, his strength, his acceleration out of cuts are awesome. I think his acceleration off the line is a little bit concerning. He does kind of take a slower approach, but I do think that, like, overall, his athletic profile is great. He gains separation. Even if he doesn't, he's one of those players that I'm still confident can make an impact at the catch point. So I really like it there. At 15 for the Falcons, I'm going to be going after the reliable and lovable Jalen Walker, which I'm very surprised Trevor Sigma has at 52 on his big board. But I mean, I think he's a quality linebacker that's also a really good edge rusher, beloved by the people of Georgia, and it just makes too much sense in my opinion. You could try to look elsewhere, but I really do think Jalen Walker is that awesome. Let's see what Monty does here at 16 for the Arizona Cardinals. You got Mike Green, which would be an interesting choice, but looking at the edge rushers in round 2 at 47, would I be happy being able to get a potential Donovan Zeruwaku, Kyle Kennard? Worst case scenario, completely different style of player, but Jordan Birch, right? Would I be happy with that? And my answer is yes, absolutely. I think that the return on investment for this team, based on the amount of edges that you do already have, like the amount of snaps that these edges would take versus the amount of snaps that a real quality defensive interior would take, are miles apart. So I'm going to be actually going after Tyleik Williams here at The Ohio State University. I might as well move my camera over a little bit too. Oh my goodness. Still adjusting stuff from last night's stream. But at pick 17 for the Cincinnati Bengals, I've made this pick several times. I'm going to make it again. We're going to be going Will Campbell, guard out of LSU. Even though I do have my concerns with him in terms of hip flexibility, if he shows that he truly cannot play the guard position because he looks uncomfortable in a three-point stance. But if he proves that, then we'll take a different route. But if he can end up at least making it work, he's going to be a massive upgrade over what you have already. I'm going to be taking him there. At 18 for the Seattle Seahawks, let's throw some curveballs in here because we want to keep things interesting. Kelvin Banks would be right up the alley, but I do have concerns over his athletic profile. I do think he drops because he does not test overwhelmingly well. I do also think since you have a defensive coach, you might get extremely intrigued with a Shamar Stewart in this equation. Like, Shamar Stewart's a freak athlete and adds beef both to the interior as well as to the edge group. This might be an absolute shit move, and I want you guys to be able to let me know if you do believe that it is. But Shamar Stewart might be the player I'd take here for Seattle. And, I mean, I might hold off right now, but I really do want to hear what you guys would think if I don't end up taking him here. But I do want to know, hey, do you think that it's the right move? And there's a really good chance that it would be. You could look at Jahad Campbell here, and using him as a chess piece might be, kind of a dream there for McDonald. So there is that. I mean, people talk about quarterback. It's not a good move. Running back is not going to be on the board. I do know that interior offensive line is super duper key. To be fair, if you are looking to fill in that guard role, I don't think you can get much better than Wyatt Milam. Like, Wyatt Milam, Gray Zabel, like, I love him to death. Wyatt Milam is so damn good. The core strength is phenomenal, and he's just a powerful blocker, man. I mean, the only reason he could potentially, slip is because of his arm length, and that's because he's not NFL tackle arm length. But this dude has one of the strongest cores. He mirrors better than any guard in this class. He really does have an incredible profile. So I'm actually going to throw a curveball here and go Wyatt Milam, which might have been my pick there at 17 for the Bengals if I did not, if I do have a little bit more clarity on Will Campbell's ability. Wyatt Milam's fantastic, though. I mean, he literally has been so locked down there for West Virginia. Could play tackle if need be, but I really do think his strength is on the interior. At 19 for the Buccaneers, I normally go Jihad Campbell because I think it's an amazing move for the team, but let's throw another curveball here, which I haven't done, which is Mike Green out of Marshall. I do have Ben Morrison returning. Otherwise, that'd be a great pick as well. But Mike Green, freak athlete. He's going to replace another pretty damn good athlete there in Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. And he's somebody that is going to be getting a ton of love after 17 and a half, if I'm not mistaken, but at least minimum 17 sack season. At 20 for the Denver Broncos, we're seeing Kelvin Banks slip, but again, I do think that is potentially possible based on the fact that he has a very unathletic profile, very heavy feet. He moves well for 6'4", 320, but he just doesn't move well overall. Like, again, you got to understand context is key. But I do think the Broncos might be the type to be willing to wait on a tight end. You could look at Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka here, but I also think that you guys have been able to work with, sniping talent down the board at the receiving position. I'm going to throw another curveball here and go Amari and Hampton. I think that the running back position needs to be addressed, and I think you need to get your air quotes Alvin Kamara, but I think Amari and Hampton is truly special, my number 6 player in the class. Again, you could wait, but the other positions you need, wide receiver, I get it. That's why I do it quite often. But also tight end, you can wait. Like, it's a good class. And it's a good class for wide receiver in terms of depth, not necessarily at the top. At 21 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you might as well just get Kelvin Banks at this point, right? But looking at the options available, I do think wide receiver and corner are the positions to address. If Amari and Hampton were here, I would say that might be the most impactful move. But we also just don't take wide receiver in the first. And Ben Morrison is considered returning. Otherwise, he'd be my dream pick for the Steelers. Like, he's not confirmed returning, but we're assuming it for the next 3 days as he decides. But regardless, like, looking at the options that are given to us, I really do like Trey Amos here. Jahdae Barron is pretty much an off-zone only corner. Does not do well in press, does not do well in man. And in the right system, he's going to be awesome. But I just don't trust him on the Steelers, where we do appreciate physicality, and we do want somebody to go man for man, bar for bar. I don't think Jahdae Barron really is going to be able to thrive in that situation much more than Beanie Bishop is doing right now. And that's not fair to Jahdae. It's not fair to us Steelers fans. So I do think let's go away from that. I do still think you need to have some sort of idea about what you're doing. And I think Azariah Thomas is going to test through the roof. He's 6'2", 198, will have a 4.3 or a 4.4 40-yard dash. He's explosive. He also is like very tenured for a player who only started one game before this year. Like, Florida State rotates those guys big time, but he is a really, really good corner. And I want to start putting his name out there because he's going to be a big riser. We'll see at the Senior Bowl if he ends up locking more guys down. He's my number 14 player. For other people who I respect, like, obviously, there are people who I respect who don't have him this high, but there are people who I respect who have him even higher than I do. And that's kind of nuts. So I think I'm going to throw the curveball here for my team and go Azariah Thomas. Sounds like crazy, but I just don't see the organization changing its morals. If we can't change our morals to fire a coach early, I doubt that we'll change our morals to draft positions that we don't like drafting earlier. Like, our organization's very, very, very stubborn. So I just don't think we'd be locking in on that. But for the Chargers, I love the idea of going after Colston Loveland to this team, but I actually think Emeka Egbuka pairing up there with Quentin Johnston as well as Ladd McConkey, it's almost impossible to say no. I don't trust Luther Burden on the outside. I mean, he's sub 6 foot. He's designed to be like a quasi running back. And so we could go Kelvin Banks here and go interior offensive line. I mean, I think that's perfectly valid as well. But I do think that the athletes you have on your team have much better mobility. I don't think it's a very good fit. So we're actually going to be going after a wide receiver here, and we're going to be going after Emeka Egbuka out of the Ohio State University. He's someone who can play on the boundary as well. I mean, look at this split here. He only did 70 reps this year, but multiple years ago, he was a quasi-boundary receiver. I think Ladd McConkey should be also a boundary receiver. You now have a reliable piece, Quentin Johnson, who's a developmental piece, and then somebody who is an absolute stud in Ladd McConkey. I really do think all three of those can end up working together in harmony. At number 23 for the Green Bay Packers, I'm looking at Kelvin Banks pretty heavily here because I want to get him off the board. Of course, if we had trades, that'd be the position to go after. I know the defense ran a ton of zone, but it was like a lot of cover 3. So not necessarily translatable zone to Jahdae Barron that I would be like expecting him to be that's pretty much man-to-man and requiring athleticism there. So I would be a little bit concerned. Jair Alexander projected to be leaving as well. So I think you could try to wait till round 2, go after somebody who's a little bit more physical, like a Noel Williams on the boundary. But you also could go after Trey Amos here, who is extremely physical, allows like an okay and acceptable completion percentage, but at the same time has 13 forced incompletions this past year, which is incredible. I mean, he allowed a couple touchdowns, but that is just pure physicality. He's always at the catch point. I love his game. And even he's faced SEC talent and has risen to the top, so I really like his game. For the Vikings, even though I don't know if Kelvin Banks really fits the athletic profile, what you're looking for, can't pass on him. Just can't. He's going to be playing guard for you guys. I think he's too immobile to play tackle, if I'm just going to be real. Like, the foot speed, he's going to be destroyed by real speed rushers on his outside shoulder. He can mitigate it as much as he can, but I am genuinely concerned, and I do think he might be the player to slip that people think is a lock in the top 10. At number 25 for the Houston Texans, Luther Burden is calling my name. The wide receiver core is decimated. I mean, even their amazing receiver, Nico Collins, he's not even fully reliably healthy every single year. So I do have my concerns there, and I think Luther Burden providing a relief option there, even though the offensive line needs work, Luther Burden will be able to take a lot of the stress off as well. And I think the value is just too good to pass on him. For the Rams at 26, I do think you could go Colston Loveland here. It matches what Colby Parkinson is playing in this offense, which shout out to Oaks Christian, former high school teammate as well. But Colston Loveland could be a perfect fit for this team, based on the value of where it's at on the board. You could look at some other positions as well if you want to develop Shamar Stewart. Like, you could have him in that rotation. I know a lot of Rams fans have brought up defensive line for this team, even though you guys are studded. Sometimes reinforcing a strength is better than, patching up a need. So there's a lot of routes you could go. You could look at that left tackle spot. Technically speaking, the left tackle spot, I might as well just look at my board, which you guys are getting spoilers of. But I'm legitimately concerned over the next best left tackle. You could end up going after Membu. You could end up going after Donovan Jackson. But, I really think that your best return on investment would be to go after someone to be the Higbee replacement in the long run. And Colston Loveland, even though I don't think it's your best bang for your buck, at 26, it's very easy to accept having Colston Loveland on your squad, playing a very clear role for the future there, and learning from Colby Parkinson as well. At 27 for the Baltimore Ravens, we should have went Colston Loveland for them, right? But, jokes aside, I think Stanley's going to be back. I do see Mercari being gone, and I do have my concerns over the future of your guard position. Like, I'm just going to be real. I do not feel very comfortable with it at all. And I think Armand Membu with the tackle flexibility can be a great guard in the short run, which I think he's a better guard than he is a tackle. I think he'll be a better interior offensive lineman, but has a potential to legitimately play tackle as well. And that's great for Ronnie Stanley, who in the past has had some legitimate injuries. So that way you can have kind of the best of both worlds, similar to what I like to do for the Seattle Seahawks, which I guess this time I didn't really do that because Armand's looked at as potentially more than just pure like a guard that can play tackle. But for me, that's the way I view Armand Membu. It is kind of more the Baltimore way to go best player available. And if you could reduce your risk by having a great interior offensive lineman that could cover for injury at tackle without being mid as all get out, that would be a really, really good addition there. He's very powerful, has great leg drive. And with that mentorship of having Linderbaum as well as Stanley there, it could be a massive, massive steal. At 28 for the Detroit Lions, Matt Golden would be so fun here. But edge rusher key. You can talk about Jack Sawyer. I want to go away from that because everybody knows it's a copy-paste pick, right? Like, everybody knows. Shamar Stewart's the one that's super intriguing to me right now because I do think when you pair up, like, I'm a Shamar denier, but if you end up pairing him with Hutchinson, the sky's the limit with him, right? And I want to hear what you guys think about this. Not the Shamar Stewart thing, but this is completely beside this specific pick. But right now, I'm developing this category called potential. And, you guys know that I grade players on an actual numerical scale. That's why I get the list right here. I don't drag guys up and down. I could end up being a coward and then having guys like Shamar Stewart be like end of the first, even though I don't have a great grade. But, reweighting it so that certain categories matter more, certain categories matter less for guys that we know for a fact are going to be labeled as projects. And that should push them up my board. So I'm doing it right now, but I would love to hear what you guys think about that as well, because I think it will be able to reshift my board to a more realistic and approachable board for realism. So curious about that. But I do think that at this point, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, and I've loved Nick Scorton too. I don't think you could pass on Nick Scorton though. High value run defender. I love Nick, but I mean, again, we've had a run on some particular individuals that, would fit teams better than Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton is worth more than Shamar Stewart, in my opinion, because I don't think that the Lions are looking for a project. Sometimes, especially when Glenn is going to be out of the building, probably in New York, you're going to be looking at least some form of stability with a new defensive mind. At number 29 for the Washington Commanders, would have been great to get Nick Scorton there. I'm looking pretty heavily at Matt Golden. Like, I think Matt Golden brings an element of speed to this offense that Dyami Brown will be leaving. And I think Dyami Brown, like, he's had a resurgence. He's doing phenomenally well. And I do think wide receiver is probably the biggest pressing issue. Terry McLaurin can't do this all by himself. You don't want to pay Dyami Brown a noticeable heft of change. And Matt Golden brings the juice. Shout out to Bring the Juice podcast. But, Matt Golden, fantastic receiver. Someone who's wide receiver 14 for me coming out of Houston into Texas. I'm just so happy that he ended up really proving me right / even being better than I ever expected. At number 30 for the Buffalo Bills, would have been great to get Matt Golden. I think that would have been probably my ideal pick for them in the first round, but so many good players. So many good players. You can get Jack Sawyer, who could be, I think he's an edge 3, which he actually ended up grading out perfectly as an edge 3. Someone who's like being able to rotate in. He's definitely a worse player than JT Tuimoloau, in my opinion. And guys like Dane Brugler have confirmed this. I think JT Tuimoloau is probably the most underappreciated edge rusher in this class, like by, the general consensus. And I mean, the only other player, I think Princely would be a good fit, but the player who I really love for this team is Braden Swinson, because I think he could learn a lot from Von Miller. And I think he would have a very similar career arc if he does have that proper learning curve. And again, I'm a psychopath for Braden Swinson. Don't take it as me saying, hey, this is where he should go. But I ended up loving him to death. I have an 83-minute edge video. You guys can go check that out. So I explained myself well there. But I will actually go defensive interior because I think the Bills, because you have that veteran leadership, have a more pressing issue on the interior. And I don't want to give Kenneth Grant to the Kansas City Chiefs. I just know if he's there, that's the guy I would go with over Walter Nolan. And I'd prefer to choose which evil I face rather than roll the dice and see which evil I will. Especially if it can end up boosting my team with Kenneth Grant there. I would love him to learn from Ed Oliver. Add that 340 pounds with a great frame. Have him and Dwayne Carter too. Like lightning and thunder almost. Dwayne Carter, the pocket buster with great impact line of scrimmage. Kenneth Grant, a little bit more of that speed and pizzazz, and both of them great size. So I love that for Buffalo, having a nice little yin and yang there with the defensive interiors. At 31 for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, I think that edge rusher is a need, but one of the dark horse positions to address is defensive interior. Milton is not going to be there. I mean, Milt's going to get paid $20 million somewhere, and he deserves it. It's so good to see him be such a star this late into his career, or like just finally reach it at the right time, because, well, he was someone who I had as like interior defensive lineman 2, I think, behind Ali McNeil that year. And I'm glad that ended up turning out well, but I just ended up loving Milton Williams. Walter Nolan could be a perfect pick at this spot, but I do think edge is a more pressing issue. And like you look at players like Umami Ellen, you got JT Tuimoloau, and JT actually can play coverage reps. I mean, I'm curious, do they have okay, so we can end up doing some quick math here. Oh, well, that's scary. He had a very bad number of defensive snaps this year. That is a little bit terrifying. But let's see pass coverage reps, because we can just do some quick math here and subtract it. This number here together was at 14. You bring the 1 up. You guys might see how dumb I might be. Another 14. So we got 44 here. 644 reps. So he had 22 reps in coverage. It's not like he never drops into coverage. And funnily enough, he does get some interceptions. So that's like, I'm pretty sure that's what he did in Penn State when he was a true freshman. Like, this guy belongs in the first round. Like, he's a really good player, and he's feisty. He's a perfect Josh Sweat replacement for the long run. And again, you're not going to be lining him up perfectly the way that you could with maybe Umami Ellen there. Technically, Braden Swenson's a better fit for what you guys are looking for. Like, if you guys want to do the same Matheruni here, was at 5'9", so 595. Like, he actually had 42 reps in defensive coverage. Man, I just don't know if we could see Braden Swenson legitimately. I love him, and I think he should be a first-round pick. I don't know if we can actually see him jumping some of the guys who just won the, I mean, to be fair, Jalix Hunt went in the 3rd round, and I love Jalix, but you aren't looking for a pure pass rusher, to be fair. If you were, then you have Bryce Huff on your team. I'm going to go after someone who's a little bit more reliable in JT Tuimoloau. At number 32 for the Kansas City Chiefs, Shamar Stewart would be fun, kind of using him as a quasi-edge defensive interior. Walter Nolan is the quick selection for me. Looking at other options, you could go after Jahdae Barron. I think that'd be a legitimate overlap with the role that you have for Trent McDuffie. Not a bad thing, but at the same time, I think Trent McDuffie was better in man coverage coming out too. I would actually look at Walter Nolan at this point. Like, I think it's realistic that he goes first round. A lot of really good players nonetheless. Do not draft tackle. You guys can't develop it. I'm just being real with y'all. We're going to go Walter Nolan at 32. 33 for the Cleveland Browns. Remember, there are no trades. Ben Morrison is returning until he ends up declaring that he's coming out. At 33 for the Browns, this is the main reason why you would consider Travis Hunter at number 2. It's because you can end up getting something like Shamar Stewart, Jack Sawyer, etc. Here at 33. And I think it's a very realistic argument. But I also do have my concern of, like, where are you going to play Travis? You can actually put him at wide receiver. And if he's at wide receiver, is he worth the number 33 overall pick? I think the biggest issue is this offensive line. And you can look at Donovan Jackson, who is playing in the state of Ohio, and look at him as potentially someone who could be your successor at that tackle position. I do kind of want to throw a curveball here and go Ozzie Trapilo, though. He is super consistent, right? I mean, on the year, 13 pressures, 2 of those being sacks. I ended up seeing the sacks that he ended up letting up, and it was actually, in my opinion, a little bit of the quarterback's fault. But best anchor in the class, still developing, could even be pushed to the interior of the offensive line if he needed to. But best anchor in the class, still polishing up, but 6'8", 310 pounds. I do think he is a dark horse first-round player. I know I was ended up talking about how the Niners could snipe him at 43, but it is kind of hard. I mean, to be fair, I doubt he actually goes above Donovan Jackson. That's tough. That's tough. I don't think the Browns would necessarily pull the trigger on that. You got Ursary here, who would be extremely fun, but I also think he should be a guard in the short run. Like, it's actually an interesting spot to be in. I'm also surprised we have Bryce Cable in here and not Logan Brown, but we'll talk about that another time. If we were to go a different position, because I do like to go offensive line for this team, I do think wide receiver is an underrated position to target. You do have Jerry Jeudy there, and then as well, you have, what's his name, Cedric Tillman, but I do think there is room for growth. Someone brought up tight end. I doubt that would be a position you guys would target, but I mean, offensive line I really do think could be the move. I think it would be a smart move, but also running back, though. Could we see the running backs go higher than we expect? Like, could Quinshawn be a running back that goes at 33 after having a godsend performance? You got to remember, he ended up having, I believe, a hand injury or hand surgery there versus Oregon. Is there some doubt maybe in his mind as he was trying to do some self-preservation and, kind of ended up leading him to being less than spectacular at certain parts of the year? Of course, again, you could wait till the 3rd round and get some good talent there too. Long story short, it's a tough pick. You can go a lot of routes. It is really a tough one. I wish that I had like a much more definitive answer on what I would do. But I mean, it's a good room. It's a good class. And I do want to give credit where credit is due for proper players. I'm going to do it. We're going to go Ozzie Trapilo. I think getting a consistent, healthy offensive tackle is going to be super key. DeJuan Jones had a sophomore slump, and we'll see if Ozzie Trapilo can end up doing something fantastic. Ended up seeing him in person here versus SMU. At 34 for the New York Giants, ended up going after Shedeur Sanders with that first selection. Again, we're going to try to do our best to do some self-preservation moves, like who's going to be able to move the needle the most in the short run, and that will probably be a corner. I like Jahdae Barron, but I'd prefer him in the slot. Doesn't fit with the style of corners that you have. Darian Porter does. And you look at Noel Williams as a third-round option for you guys. Igbinosun as a late-round option for you guys. He's someone who will be slipping down my board a lot. He is the only player now in the top 32 with a star because he's someone who will fall a ton. And, I'm just really pissed off at him. But Siobhan Revell fits exactly the profile of what you're looking for the style of corner as well as the vision for exactly what you're looking for with your cornerback 2 position. At number 35 for the Tennessee Titans, we went Cam Ward in the first. You can go after Shamar Stewart here, Jack Sawyer. You can just end up getting a really solid player. But I actually want to throw another curveball into the situation, potentially with Jahad Campbell. I think Jahad Campbell would be a great addition. If you get Ozzie Trapilo, I think that would be the best for your team. You could go Donovan Jackson and see if he works out at right tackle. And then, you could end up upgrading that right guard position with him, worst case scenario. Because I do think you need to worry about who's blocking. But I actually will be opting to go after the best player available, which is Jahad Campbell to play edge for you. I think this dude is just so freaking good. He is going to be your version of Abdul Carter. I really do think he is a special talent, my number 13 player on my board. At number 36 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, being here with Will Johnson off the board and now looking at the fact that you can go Shamar Stewart if you want to go defensive interior, he's a freak player who can play edge or defensive interior. It feels like a bulky kind of thing. Like that is something that you could absolutely be selecting at this point. And this is a team with Josh Hines-Allen as well as Travon Walker. I feel comfortable in that situation, but I think Balky's going to love the athleticism of Gray Zabel. I have him as my number 17 player on my board. He's a freak athlete. I think he can get a little ahead of himself when he starts winning a rep and then kind of forget to maintain control. But I think that's something that North Dakota State isn't really emphasizing. They're more so you're by far our best blocker. Let's not really give a shit about that too much. And even versus Colorado, by the way, look at the teams he faced, right? A lot of nobodies, no disrespect to those schools. But the teams that I honestly would be most worried about, UNI and Colorado, right? Those are the 2 games out of this list that I'd be focusing the most on for NFL talent. He did arguably the best in. That's incredible. And I didn't think that I'd like Gray Zabel, but ended up watching that tape versus Colorado, and I fell in love with him. And he's going to be a great interior offensive line. Could be a center or a guard. I think he's going to be a freak athlete as well. And so he's going to be super exciting there. I really do think he could be a first-round player. At 37 for the Las Vegas Raiders, some good players have fallen. You got Tetairoa McMillan in the first. Here in the second, you could end up rocking with one of these top running backs, but at the same time, multiple positions you could address. You could look at that corner position with Darian Porter on the board. He's a little bit older, but very new to the corner position and ended up doing a phenomenal job. Quick feet, 6'4", 200. Will work well with DeCamerion Richardson. I would personally love that for you guys. If you had Jahad Campbell on the board, I would also be a big fan. Carson Schwezinger is a dark horse pick via a move back. I don't think I would take him here. You could look at quarterback. Will Howard, could he have played himself into this category? It's possible. I don't think it's probable. I think he did play himself into day 2, though. Absolutely. And you guys know me. Will Howard is my QB3. Based on the guys who ended up sliding back into college, that is how I feel about him right now. But Senior Bowl is going to shift everything. I think Gabriel's going there. Milroe's going to be there. Howard is going to be there. Hell, Riley Leonard, I think, is going to be there. Quinn Ewers, I think he'll be there too. A lot of these players. Max Brosmer is really fun, but I don't know. Tom Brady might end up really loving Will Howard's ability to game manage. Outside of the fact that he slid 1 second too late, he would have had pretty much an undefeated season outside of Michigan. He would have been able to beat Oregon twice. And so with wide receiver already selected, I think that you guys are in prime position to go after any other player that you're really looking for. I might want to push up the running backs. Like, I don't know if I could feasibly do that. But with all these other teams here looking for a running back to use as well, I could be convinced. I mean, I do think there's so many needs on your team. I'm actually going to go after Darian Porter. I think I've done it before, but 6'4", 200 pounds. He's a top 32 player on my board. He might be 24, but he also is just so, like, he's so new to the position that you're not getting somebody who has played a ton of reps to where there's a lot of tread off his tires and he just is now getting good. No, I mean, this guy is just learning the position and he's really good already. And that's awesome to see because the sky's the limit with him. At 38 for the Patriots, we ended up going after Travis Hunter in the first round. Here in the second, I could absolutely see them try to develop Ariante Ursary. But more importantly, I think you could use an interior offensive line piece if Donovan Jackson fails at left tackle. I'm going to roll the dice on Donovan Jackson. For the Chicago Bears, they went Josh Connerly in the first. And you guys know what my vision is for this team. So at this point, we've addressed interior offensive line with the vision for tackle. I'm going to be looking at defensive interior and edge. And you guys brought up a beautiful point, which is why I love you guys so much. You provide more insight than even I can end up having. Gervin Dexter is super tight with Princely Umanmielen, and he works really well as an edge 2 on this team. I have him as an edge 3, but I think in the right system, he absolutely would be a quality edge 2. And so you have that instant chemistry. I'm a big fan of it. We'll address running back possibly with the next pick. At 40 for the New Orleans Saints, I think we're in a great position. Like, we're firing off here, by the way. I mean, I just love how this is all going. With Derek Harmon, I mean, he's super young, right? He's a true junior, and you end up having someone who had a great pass rush win rate on the year. He's a high-quality defensive interior number 2 that you can really use with Brian Brzee. And, I mean, he's been doing great the entire time he's been playing since Michigan State. And so I want to be able to roll the dice with him. So going after, we got Josh Simmons, and then now we go after Derek Harmon. Could have went Shamar Stewart. I think I was going to go that route, but at the same time, I don't think Shamar Stewart is going to provide the impact that Derek Harmon would. When you do have in round 3 guys like Landon Jackson, right? Kyman Rucker could be a day 3 guy. Ashton Gillette. I just think that you could have some real bang for your buck there. But for the Bears at 41, I would do a trade back to acquire said pick. But I do think that running back goes here. And I love Caleb Johnson, but I really do like Quinshon Judkins being the Sonic on this team. He's also extremely smart, super high IQ, had a little bit of a down year once he ended up getting that hand injury, but ended up really having a proper resurgence when it mattered most. And that's super duper key. We're going to go Quinshon Judkins here to the Chicago Bears. At 42 for the New York Jets, ended up going after Mason Graham in the first. I could even go for Shamar Stewart here, but like we might actually just go Jahdae Barron and see if he works as a boundary corner. If he does not, put him to safety. And I think that's the smartest thing, going best player available. Jahdae Barron goes to the Jets as a defensive back. At number 43 for the San Francisco 49ers went Michael Williams in the first. And I mean, at this point, you can go Ursary, who I literally texted your scouting director, RJ Gillen, and I'm telling him, you're going to like Ariante Ursary. And you know what? I think that's a great move. Cam Williams is a true right tackle, but he's proven to be far less effective than Ursary, in my opinion. Ursary can also play guard early on. I think he fits better on the Niners, and I think he is the dream pick here in the second round. Michael Williams, Ariante Ursary. At 44 for the Dallas Cowboys, went running back in the first, Ashton Genty, again, kind of the copy-paste thing to do. Here in the second, you could go Io Maynor. I do like some of the weapons that you do have on the team. You could go after Omar Norman Lott, who is about 315 pounds. And you can use him as a nose. You can use him as a penetrator. You can use him to Osa roll. Like, there's a lot that you can do. Or you can wait till round 3 for someone like Alfred Collins, Deon Walker, to be able to test out there. Darius Alexander. And so let's change it up a little bit. Like, you want to go quarterback? That'd be entertaining. Because, again, if you waited on running back, could you get Cam Scatabo? Yes. But I also think there are legitimate teardrops. At this point, you are in a different tier, like a noticeably different tier than Ashton Genty. Right now, your offense is actually pretty happy, and I really like that for you. You could go after best player available at edge. It's not impossible. It depends on what you're going to do with Micah. if you guys let him go, you're absolute dumbass organization. And I live in Dallas. I could be crucified for saying things like that. But like, truly speaking, you guys need to get it together. I do like the idea of going wide receiver, though. And I do want somebody who could be somebody as a more contested catch style receiver. And Jaden Higgins is that. He can block well, and it works well with the identity of Ashton Genty. Like, yeah, you can go Jack Besh and maybe in round 3, Savion Williams. But I do love Jaden Higgins. I love Jaden Higgins. He's my number 39 player on my board. Taking him at 44 to me makes a lot of sense. And again, we have somebody who will be dropping in Davis Igbinosun because I just do not like how he finished off the year. So he will be dropping undoubtedly. So he's my number 38 player when all is said and done. Tyleik Williams is going to be rising as well. And Xavier Nwankpa is also going to be dropping because I haven't gotten the defensive backs yet. So lots of players to be shifting around, which is going to be fun. But at 45 for the Indianapolis Colts, ended up going after Tyler Warren in the first. At this point, I actually want to throw a little bit of a curveball, which is going after edge. I think you can absolutely use another quality edge rusher. And now with Lou as your defensive coordinator, I think getting after someone like Jack Sawyer, who's just really damn reliable and solid, makes too much sense at 45. At 46 for the Atlanta Falcons, we went after Jalen Walker there in the first. I don't think it's a bad idea to double up on edge at this point. I mean, I think with Jalen Walker being a quasi-edge, you can go Shamar Stewart and have someone who could penetrate from the interior as well as the edge. And I actually think that taking the upside with Shamar Stewart is worth more than when you have an option like Jalen Walker than on a lot of other teams. At number 47 with the Arizona Cardinals, we ended up going after Tyleik Williams in round number 1. Here in round number 2, what was I talking about? Azir Waku, Kyle Kennard. It's just kind of the dream selection there, in my opinion. And Donovan Azir-Waku has great power for the fact that he's 6'2", sub 250. 6'2", 247. He's built well. I could see him being 255 and being just a very, very good asset there. Fix the defense. Find out what to do with the other positions outside of that. 48, Dolphins. Malachi Starks round 1. Could go offensive line here. And, who's the best offensive interior available? You can look at Jonas Savania with the flexibility he has. He has a lot of potential, man. A lot of really good potential. You got Marcus Bowe, who I really like as an interior as well. Like both of them tackles. But Jonah is somebody that I'd feel bad if he didn't get a shot at tackle eventually, which I guess this is kind of the team for that. So we're going to go Jonas Savania here. He is lower on my board. Like probably he's going to be in like the 64 range, but interior offensive linemen get graded pretty fairly. Actually, no, he's actually closer in that 70 range, but Jonah, very flexible player. Excited to see him at the next level. 49 for the Bengals went Will Campbell in the first to play guard for y'all. Let's go to the defense at this point. Some really good players here on the edge, and I do think that you guys could have a newer identity with Braden Swinson, who is 22.1% pass rush win rate, 33.9% win rate on true pass rushing, down second to only, well, technically third, might be like fourth, but like in this class, the notable names, he is third only to someone with a 40% pass rush win rate. Where are you at? In Josiah Stewart, and then Abdul Carter, and he was right on Abdul's tail. And Braden Swinson's fantastic, 6'4", 250. I already broke down why I love him to death, but he's my number 3 player in the class. And I'm sending him to a division rival, so that's how you know that I don't have too much bias there. But going to LSU for back-to-back picks, it actually ended up working last time. You went back-to-back LSU picks with Burrow and Chase. At number 50 for the Seattle Seahawks, we ended up going after Wyatt Milam in the first, which I personally love. He's a great player. I'm going to be perfectly happy if you guys end up doing that. Defensively, I think that Nick Eamon-Warry makes too much sense. He's going to be rising up, but every time I say I'm going to try to get him into the first, there's just so many good players in this class that I just can't fathom it. Like maybe to the Bills at 30, that would be the time where if I had to force it, it would work. So if that's like the first one, I don't really see many others. And so you guys are getting a first round quality safety here at 50. I don't know if he'll be there because, again, if the Bills are sitting there and they're like, well, Kenneth Grant or Nick Eamon-Warry, I do have a higher grade on Nick Eamon-Warry, and the fact is 6'3", 230 pounds, and running a 4.3 with pick 6 ability. It's like pretty damn awesome nonetheless. 51 for the Buccaneers went Micah Green in the first, a very realistic move nonetheless. I do think you could go for a linebacker at this point, but the best thing to do, actually, in my opinion, is going after a corner. I'm assuming Ben Morrison's returning unless he says he's coming out. It makes it more like, it makes it to where we have to make decisions that we don't really want to, which, you know, the easy thing for me to do is to go after Ben Morrison. But as I've said many times, he would have been gone long before this. My board, he's only number 4 overall. If you think I'm going to let him slide this far, you know, if I'm not letting Brayden Swinson slide this far, you bet your ass I'm not letting Ben Morrison slide this far. Looking at my next best available player, because again, outside of Ben Morrison, again, considering him returning, like my next best player is, damn, we really have, like, is Tyler Booker. I don't think Tyler Booker is going to be taken on this team. Again, interior offensive line hasn't been fully regraded either. So Booker and Jackson both are out-of-date grades. So I will be completely transparent there. Fannin, I wouldn't say it. Sebastian Castro, the defensive backs, as I said, are out of date. You went Nick Ebenwari. I love Antoine Powell-Ryland to death, but he's not going to be useful to this team. Jabbar Muhammad, Jack Kaiser, like really good players. Again, some of these guys are going to be getting boosts as well. Like it's a pretty, I have actually been going pretty strict in terms of taking guys I really, really love. Really like Quincy Riley there too. Like Quincy Riley might be a dark horse pick if he ends up testing out well. All that being said, you guys could look at wide receiver here with Io Maynor. I think that's a smart move. Like it's just going best player available. And I really like Io Maynor. Haven't regraded all the wide receivers yet, but he's someone who absolutely should be worth it in this tier. 52 with the Broncos. End up going Amari and Hampton there in the first. Yeah, could you have gotten Cam Scatabo here, Trey Henderson, Caleb Johnson? Sure. But at the same time, they also, to me, are in a different tier, much lower than Amari and Hampton, who I think is a super stud. So at this point, I think going after someone like Harold Fannin might work. I mean, he's a feisty blocker. It's not the ideal build that you guys are looking for, but this dude is literally a godsend. He's 6'4", 230, but he's a really, really good receiver and a very tenacious blocker, very underrated for his size. I'm just going to roll the dice. Let's see what happens. Good after the catch as well, kind of acts as, you know, mitigation for not going after Luther Burden earlier. I'd personally be extremely happy if you walked out with 2 top 32 weapons there in Fannin as well as Hampton. At 53 for the Steelers, we went Azariah Thomas in the first. And again, we can go after so many positions. I think wide receiver Jalen Royals is the position the player I normally target. I might try to counter myself because it's a move I made so many times and try to force myself to go a different route. Could we go the QB route with Will Howard? Yeah, I don't think it gets us anywhere though. Running back wise, could we go after somebody here as well? I think Caleb Johnson embodies what it is to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And again, I'm lower on Caleb Johnson than pretty much anybody else. And I'm continually reevaluating the running backs to try to, you know, see a little bit more close to the consensus, which is not necessarily great scouting, but at the same time, like when I don't believe in somebody and I test my belief as much as I can, and I still don't believe in them, then that's when I feel comfortable, right? I still feel like there's more of Caleb Johnson I want to see before I end up fully finalizing my opinion. I think he's a very quality back who I have sitting around that later day 2 territory, but especially realistically, the Steelers would be so happy with this. You can get Azariah Thomas to bolster the defense and Caleb Johnson to work in the Arthur Smith offense. I think you're asking for a lot of success there in Pittsburgh. At 54 for the Chargers, they went Emeka Egbuka round number 1. I think tight end is perfectly feasible here. Gunnar Helm, Mason Taylor, I do think they would be realistic options there for the Chargers, but also you want to wait. Is the Miami tight end on here? I don't see him. No, that sucks. But you got Rivaldo Fairweather. That's fun. Fedone. Yeah, I like him too. But there's a lot of good tight ends. No need to force it if you're not getting one of the top options there. I love Jake Brenningstool. He's somebody who I adore. But we went after Emeka Egbuka. I think this team needs interior offensive line help. I think that's the biggest thing. You have Tyler Booker still here, who could absolutely slip. He's having a mediocre year, and you know, with other tackles being able to play guard arguably at a more exciting level than Tyler Booker, certain teams absolutely might pass on that to be able to get someone like Jonas Savania, who has the vision of being a higher value pick in the long run. At 55 for the Green Bay Packers, we ended up going after Trey Amos in the first round, which I think is very, very possible. You can go after TJ Sanders and end up going for that 3-tech position. I think it's very realistic. Omar Norman Lott is a freak athlete. I think that could work out a lot as well. Your edge rush, you do need some extra gap penetration. And to be fair, we've depleted them. I like Kyle Kennard a lot, but we've depleted the edge cord a noticeable amount. Could we go wide receiver here with Jalen Royals? That's actually something that I would really like. And I think that he's really good after the catch. He's really good in terms of overall athleticism as well. I've heard he's even in the 4.3s. And he's going to be there at the Senior Bowl, so I know that the Packers like to take Senior Bowl players as well. I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to say they go with another second-round receiver. They went with Jaden Reed before. They went with Christian Watson before. They're going to go after Jalen Royals this time. And I honestly think they all kind of complement each other. Jalen Royals, I just love to death, so I'm happy to take him there at 55. Bills at 56. Jalen Royals would have been an amazing pick for us here. But we ended up going after Kenneth Grant. Unfortunately, we have TJ Sanders here. I love TJ Sanders and Omar Norman Lott. Maybe thinking next time I might actually opt and go for the crazy Nick Eamon-Wari pick there in the first. Wide receiver wise, you could go Isaiah Bond and see what happens. But with his injury concern, his injury red flag, I would say I'd be a bit more reserved. So other positions, I think edge rusher is proper value right now. And if you can get Kyle Kennard here in this part of the second round, which to be fair, I'm electing to absolutely screw over the Panthers, which I apologize to my Panthers fans, then we're gonna do it. So we got Kyle Kennard and also Kenneth Grant for Buffalo. At number 57 for the Houston Texans, ended up going after Luther Burden in round 1. I'm gonna go after offensive line here in round number 2. And Marcus Bowe playing guard is just like, it's too good to pass on. I love him, friend of the show, he's a right tackle for Purdue, but I really do think he can play center or a guard. Player I have a lot of respect for, a person I have a lot of respect for, and so we have him going at 57. 58 for the Carolina Panthers, we ended up going after James Pierce. Oh, I forgot. Thank God we went James Pierce. I'm so used to taking Mason Graham. Well, this is perfect then. I'll be dang. I didn't screw you guys at all. We're going to go TJ Sanders here. Xavier Watts would be great too, but I love TJ Sanders. He's a top 40 guy on my board, if I'm not mistaken. Close enough. He's top 50. Right? Is he top 50? Am I tripping? Oh, man. I guess I am tripping. He's 65. So, still definitely in the range for this pick. At 59 for the Baltimore Ravens. Ended up going after Armand Bembou to play guard for us in the short run, tackle in the long. I do think that you are in a position to upgrade your edge rushing position with someone like Jordan Burch, who could be a good tweener. I like the potential vision for him on the team that way. I do think corner, you could look at someone to be a long-term asset, but no need to do that here in the second. Wide receiver, you could go Savion Williams and then just have someone who's great after the catch, great contested catch-wise as well. Ridiculous contested catch rate. Has a poor drop rate, but those are just like concentration drops. I don't understand that personally, but having someone who's great after the catch, it's not a role that really is on the Ravens outside of Isaiah Likely, in my opinion, of someone who can have both size and after the catch ability. I think that it would be very intriguing for Baltimore to do that. At 60, you got the Detroit Lions when Nick scored in round 1. Crazy steal, by the way. But at this spot, I love Omar Norman Lott so much. I really want to take him to this team, but it just doesn't make any sense comparatively to some other positions to target. I think wide receiver, if you had Savion Williams on the board, would be very, very intriguing. I don't see anybody who would end up offering enough there. You could look at the interior of the offensive line at this point. You also could develop Cam Williams if you really wanted to, but I don't see that as a net positive move if I may be so clear. But looking at the offensive line, I mean, woof. I don't think I have anybody overwhelmingly high that like I would be putting in this role. So it is a shitty situation. Looking at positions that you could be interested in, you could look at another boundary corner, underrated position to draft. You could go Max Hairston because it is very similar in terms of the skill set to what you have there with Rakestraw as well as Arnold in terms of physicality. Defensive back wise, I'll be pretty happy. You know what? I know you don't need it. We're going to go best player available. We're going to go Omar Norman Lott. You can pair him up with Lee McNeil. I know that I believe you are on was it only on a 1-year deal with Reader? It might be, which makes me very much feel much better about this. I like Omar Norman Lott, and you can use him as an edge rusher too at 315. I know it's not super logical, but at the same time, I think it's the best player available for the Lions. And if you can't trade out, getting great players, especially one who's still raw and developing like Omar Norman Lott, it makes a lot of sense, vision-wise for the future. 61 for the Washington Commanders. We ended up going after Matt Golden in the first round. Here, I think edge rusher could be the position you target if value is right. I don't think the value is right. So we could end up looking at tackle here. Taking him from the Eagles, I think would be so smart with Cam Williams. Like, if you let him slip, he's going to be going to the Eagles. Like, that's a stout U kind of dude. So I do think that, you got to play a little bit of defense, air quotes, by not allowing the Eagles to train up Cam Williams to be a true, consistent successor there to Lane Johnson. And so we're going to go Cam Williams there for Washington, addressing the offensive side with 2 Texas players. At 62 for the Buffalo Bills. Again, can Ben Morrison consider returning in this? I think Xavier Watts is perfect at this moment. I mean, so far we've gone after Kyle Kennard and Kenneth Grant. I know we're going to continue neglecting Josh Allen, but that's usually what organizations do once they realize their quarterback can carry. And so we are going to end up going Xavier Watts there at 62. 63 for the Philadelphia Eagles when JT Tuimoloau there in the first. I know that there's going to be some pushback on that, and I respect it. But another position to be able that you could address is that tight end position, like Gunnar Helm, Mason Taylor. I like Mason Taylor. I think he, outside of the game versus Texas A&M, is fantastic. So I would recommend waiting because you can get someone like Luke Lachey. Luke Lachey is really solid. Jake Brenningstool. Terrence Ferguson's fun as well. I just don't really see this as something you have to force here in round number 2 if you don't get one of the top 3. So offensive tackle wise, if you want to develop somebody as well, you just saw Cam Williams go. Anthony Belton is literally the dream pick, but I do think he actually might be even better as a guard. So that's something you can get on day 3. Don't need to really force it here. So we're not going to do it. Eagles, a sneaky need is boundary corner. I mean, if you guys don't bring back Isaiah Rodgers, Darius Slay's getting up there in age. And I do think you could get somebody who is, very, very good at the catch point, someone who's very smart and someone who could end up helping out on run defense. And that's Quincy Riley here. I already know I'm about to get flamed if I go Quincy Riley, though. Actually, to be fair, we still could go defensive interior. Omar Norman Lott would make a lot of sense for this team. But the player who I'm thinking of here is Darius Alexander. I don't know why he's graded so lowly. It just doesn't make sense to me. This dude is a monster. He will be a day 2 pick, no doubt in my mind. Unless there's some weird medicals or personal history that we don't know about, this dude is an absolute stud. Quick pass rush winner. He can blow up the line of scrimmage. I mean, this dude is worth taking a shot at. 6'4", 310 pounds. I'm going to roll the dice on it. We're going to go full defensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles. At 64 for the Kansas City Chiefs. So far went Walter Nolan. Good for you guys. I do think corner is such a pressing issue as well. And there's a player who I really, really like. And actually, he goes to Iowa. His name's Jamari Harris. And Jamari Harris, I don't know why, he kind of just feels like a player that would end up going to the Chiefs. I don't know why. But at the same time, we'll get Quincy Riley as the person to fill in because I want to boost Quincy's ADP and I almost took him. So we're going to be taking my number 40 player on my board, Jamari Harris. So there you guys go. That's going to be the video. Let me know what you think. I know it was a little bit deviant from my normal standard mock draft, but that's what we have fun here for. Thank you again. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.